Okay, let's go. It's time for episode 32. It's me, Chucky, with you as always, and we've got Jigsaw as well.
Indeed we do.
Okay, well, 5 movies on the list for today. First up, we've got TREMORS from 1990, a bit of a creature feature. Then we turn to a thriller / drama, if you can call it that. Turn the River from 2007 with Famke Janssen. Then we move on to House from 1985. We switch over to Peeping Tom from 1960. Bit of a oldie. And then we finish things off with A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge from 1985.
So we are starting off with Tremors tonight. And I suspect many people have seen this movie. Pretty much in this very small, isolated town in Nevada, the locals run amok of these giant worms that just pop up from the underground, attack people, eat people, and then go back underground, and they have to figure out a way to survive the onslaught of, I think there are 4 worms, and yeah, it's a fun time. It's a sort of a horror-like comedy mix. And it's a movie I've always personally enjoyed. I mean, I've seen this so many times, back when I was a kid watching this movie. It's not particularly thrilling. I mean, there's a little suspense occasionally, but it's much more, like I said, a horror humor type land. It has a pretty decent cast. Probably most standout would be, I would have to imagine, Margot Gross playing a sort of a gun nut type guy. Him and his wife, who's played by Reba McEntire, really bring a lot of fun to this movie. But it's a very basic story, in sort of like a monster creature feature type thing. But it blends together really well, and I personally think it's not maybe amazing, I think it's a really good movie. So what do you think about this one, Chucky?
Well, I'm going to consider this a first-time watch for me, which is kind of a weird thing to say considering how popular it is. I have kind of seen it in the past, but I can't say for certain if I've ever watched the whole thing. I can't recall if I caught it on TV when I was younger. I certainly have seen certain scenes and bits and pieces, but I'm going to consider this my first-time watch. And I found it quite a entertaining movie. Like I said, not quite getting to the point where you'd say it's really great, or I wouldn't say it's going to make my regular playlist or anything like that, but I'll certainly give it another watch at some point again. It does have some decent humor in it without going too over the top with any kind of comedy. I thought the creatures were pretty interesting, and, there was a little more gooiness going on in the movie than I anticipated going into it. So all in all, I had a pretty good time with this one. Not great, but, pretty good.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about this one, at least in my opinion, is like the extremely small town that this takes place in. I think the population is 14 people. I think throughout the movie there might be 16-ish. But we're talking like a very small town that's completely disconnected from, I think, where the nearest town is, 38 miles away. So it brings sort of like a very isolated sense to this movie. And that just always, I don't know why, but it always stuck with me every time I watch this. Just a town of just like 15 people trying to survive pretty much on their own.
I mean, I kind of like the location, but at the same time, I kind of get a little bored by the location as well. It's just,
That's Nevada for you.
Those types of locations just, I mean, no matter where you go in the movie, it all kind of looks the same, so technically, you kind of need that location to make this movie work, but yeah, I can't recall any movies off the top of my head where they take place in Nevada or, desert-type locations that I really, really love. Maybe there is one, but I'm just not thinking of it. I do usually like Kevin Bacon in most of his movies. I don't go out and seek to watch anything that Kevin Bacon is in, but usually if he's in it, I usually enjoy whatever he does in the movie. And, he's pretty entertaining in this one.
Yeah, it's somewhat amusing because, like I said, I've seen this one so many times, and back when I was a kid, it's not like I knew who actors were. So the fact that there's Kevin Bacon in this movie, it didn't mean anything to me. It's just another guy. This is probably one of like the maybe 3 Kevin Bacon movies I know I've seen. And honestly, this is the only movie I watch and think, oh hey, that's Kevin Bacon. So I guess the movie is good for that much.
Well, if you watch Wild Things, you get to see Kevin's Bacon.
That sounds like a movie I'm going to put on my not watch list.
Well, hey, there is one very good scene in the movie where you get to see some titties.
Unfortunately, there's no nudity in Tremors, though, if that's what you're looking for. This is strictly PG-13 approved stuff.
Yeah. I may have bumped it up an extra rating if that chick did end up having world-class breasts and an ass that won't quit.
And legs that go all the way up.
Yeah.
That's one of the lines that always cracks me up every time I see that scene. And just this disappointment once they actually get it.
Yeah. But yeah, there's some funny moments in the movie too, like I really like the pole vault fail. It's like, oh shit. I mean, it's a little too convenient that they had all those rocks just in the places they needed to be to do all that pole vaulting, but yeah, it's a movie. You just gotta sometimes do those things to make it work.
I also liked how both Michael Gross's character can just make homemade bombs just with stuff lying around. So it's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, it's like some household chemicals. Put some oven cleaner, some dishwashing liquid, and
yeah, I really liked Kevin Bacon in this movie too, but I think Michael Gross's character really brings. If without him, I feel like this movie might have been a bit more forgettable.
Yeah, I kind of thought he and his wife were done for at that scene where he's in his basement or whatever that is, and yeah, it's kind of amusing to see them actually kill one, get away.
Yeah, and like then the camera pans and we see they have a whole wall of all these giant guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you've seen any of the sequels too, but there's a few characters from this movie who pop up in the second and third movies too, and both of those, at least the second movie is also pretty decent. So if you ever have a chance, you might have to check that one out.
I don't know if there's like a Guinness World Records entry for this type of thing, but I feel like this movie may have set the record number of times the word plan was used. Yeah, there's multiple times it's like, you gotta have a plan, you don't have a plan, this guy has a plan, what's the plan? It's just constant plan. I don't think I could go 5 minutes without seeing someone say plan. Not that it really annoyed me, but it's just something I picked up on. They kept saying plan.
Well, I guess if you're in a panicked situation, you just revert back to the same 6 words again. I've never been chased by a graboid before, so I might not know.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think Tremors is a perfect movie, but I do find it a consistently enjoyable, easy watch. It's not too challenging, just a sit back and have fun type movie. And I always have fun with it, and I have since I was a kid, so I'm going to give this one probably a pretty high rating for most people, but I'm going to be giving this an 8.5, and I'm rounding it down to an 8 out of 10. And like I said, I enjoy it, and it's definitely a monster movie that's worth watching, and probably one of the top 20 horror movies of the 1990s, which is a somewhat weak decade.
Yeah. I'm going to give it a 7. It's a good 7. I mean, for me, a 7 is any movie that's decent. And I definitely find this to be a decent movie. I compare my ratings to other movies where I've given 7s and 8, and it kind of falls more in line with the ones that I've given a 7 to. So it gets a 7 from me. I think it's a solid movie. It's got some humor. It's got some decent scenes with the creatures. Like I said, it's a little gooier than I actually anticipated it being going into it. Yeah, I was never bored during the movie. I was always entertained or at least interested in what was happening. And like I said, I'll definitely come back and watch this one again at some point. Maybe not for many years, but yeah, it's a solid movie. Let's switch things over to Turn the River from 2007, which is kind of, I guess, a drama thriller. Now, I'm going to be really lazy about this and just steal the plot that's been put up on IMDb, because I couldn't be asked trying to write my own. But it's essentially just about this pool shark who takes the ultimate gamble when she kidnaps her own son and flees her ex-husband. I don't know if kidnapping is exactly... I mean, from a legal sense, I guess, but... I mean, the kid wants to go with her. It's not like the child's been taken in that way, but... Anyways, this is a movie that, came out around that time when there's a lot of other movies just being pumped out and put on DVD shelves, direct-to-video type thing. It does have a bit of a direct-to-video type feel to it. I don't know why I watched it. I mean, it's not even really all that thrilling enough. It's more, I'd say it's more of a drama than a thriller, but I guess the ending, you could say, is some sort of thriller element to it, but it's just a very flat movie to me. It does have some decent actors, but not any memorable performances, not really any memorable scenes either. So before I talk more about that, what did you think of this one?
Yeah, I was actually wondering why you watched this, because like I guess the movies, I see it as pretty much a straight out drama. This is pretty much what I expect from drama movies, and I think it's well made for what it is. I guess one thing I should say, I've played pool maybe 5 times in my life. So when they're talking about this pool terminology type stuff, half the time I had no idea what was going on. So it was interesting. I don't see many movies dealing with pool as a way to make money, but honestly, there's only like maybe 3 scenes that really focused on it. The rest of it was just the lead character's ongoing drama with her and her son trying to get him back. There were some interesting ideas in the movie. I sort of liked the grandmother's sort of like religious differences with her son, and being raised Catholic. I thought that was somewhat interesting, but none of it really hit well. I mean, like I said, it's just pretty much a flat movie. Everything's like competently done, but that's about it. Like nothing stands out. I mean, there's some decent actors, but the story, I mean, even the conclusion, I sort of expected it being what type of movie it is, but I didn't care for the conclusion at all. And then they end with like a cute flashback for some reason. It doesn't make a difference. And it's a movie that I can't imagine that stands out to many people.
Yeah, I didn't really see why they did that little flashback. Maybe I missed the point of it, but...
Maybe the ending was so terrible they just wanted to give another scene so people forgot.
Yeah. I mean, the whole movie is sort of flat, I think, but even the ending, I would have thought a little more something thrilling would happen. Like, it's just go to a bus stop, there's some cops, try to go to your vehicle to get away, and obviously there's one gunshot there, but that's it. You know, it didn't...
Like, it's very lackluster.
Yeah. I think the movie has decent potential ideas that could have been done better, but I mean, it's certainly not the first movie that's taken like a gambling type situation and tried to turn it into something thrilling. I mean, there's Like, one that comes to mind is a movie called Rounders. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but it's got Matt Damon. It's a poker movie. It's got John Malkovich in it. And some other people, John Turturro. There's a bunch of decent actors in it. And that's actually more of a... I would consider it a thriller. But it's the same thing, thriller, drama. But, you know, the actual poker scenes, they're just playing cards. But those scenes are somewhat memorable. Whereas all the pool scenes in this movie, it didn't seem like there was anything major going on during those scenes.
Yeah, I was holding out hope that the father would just let the son go. Because, this is just my opinion, but I think the son probably would have been a lot better off with the mother than the father, based on everything I saw from the father. Just the way the father acted toward the son, like, hey, don't correct me about things again, you know, it makes
about
me look
mountains.
bad. Yeah, talk about a dick move. Like, he even brought out an encyclopedia just to prove his son wrong. And,
Yeah.
like, I mean, talk about like, that guy was horrible. And it seemed like he might have been okay with his son going with the mother, but he just couldn't do it. And then, of course, he says multiple times, oh, hey, she has a gun. Some quality father right there.
Yeah. And it almost felt like he didn't want his son anyways.
Yeah, and I wish, honestly, if they had gone that direction, if he had just said he didn't know what happened, you know, I would have liked the movie that much more, but I would have been a little more okay with it. It just, from these types of movies, you expect a somewhat, not necessarily unhappy ending, but you don't expect the happiest ending from a lot of drama movies like this, and, I mean, it's pretty much what you would expect going into it.
Yeah. I didn't really have a whole lot else to say, but on the poster of the movie, you know, it's got a picture of Famke Janssen on it. For some reason, she looks way better on the poster than in the movie, so that's obviously a bit of a marketing thing. I mean, some people consider her to be an attractive woman. You know, she's okay, but I also hear that a lot of people in Hollywood think she's a bitch, so... But, I mean, like I was saying, she looked better on the poster than in the movie. In the movie, she's looking like she hasn't showered in 3 days, that type of thing.
I mean, to be fair, she was getting... I mean, sleeping on a pool table. I mean, talk about a terrible life.
Yeah.
I'll probably try to sleep in the truck as opposed to the pool table, but that's just me.
Yeah, but on the poster, you know, looks like she's got her hair done, maybe some makeup on, I don't think, but in the movie, she looks, not quite homeless, but, you know, certainly not kept that well. Yeah, so, just to summarize, it's a fairly flat movie. There's not really many standout scenes in the movie. Well, not really any, but it's got some decent actors, but you know, it's just not enough to really take the movie any place. So I'm going to give this one... I'm going to give it a 5. I didn't have a bad time with it. I was just waiting for something good to happen, and it just never really happened. And yeah, I guess that's where I am with this one.
Yeah, this is pretty much the definition of unremarkable. Some decent performances, a somewhat interesting story. There was certainly potential with some of the things they were dealing with, but it didn't work. I wasn't particularly interested that much at the time, and I wasn't hoping for a bit more. I didn't expect much, but it's just not... I mean, it's a drama movie, and it's just not my type of thing. So I'm just going to give this a 6 out of 10. It's competently made, it looks nice, it's just uninteresting, and I'm never going to watch it again. This next movie, though, is a bit more interesting, being the 1985 classic House. And I just want to say, a lot of people call this a 1986 movie, and that might be closer to accurate, but I'm just going off IMDb right now, so I'm still trying to get used to that year change. But anyhow, it's a probably pretty well-known movie. This guy inherits a house from his recently deceased aunt, and he's trying to write a book about his experiences in Vietnam, whilst also dealing with his son who went missing a year previous. And then some strange, creepy things happen in the house, and he tries to deal with it. It's another horror comedy. This one has the comedy being a bit more obvious. There are a few in my opinion, over-the-top comedic scenes. But I actually have a bit of a personal history with this one. Like, I saw bits and pieces of this movie when I was a kid, like 5, 6 years old. So to this day, even though the movie's not necessarily amazing, there are scenes in this movie that actually still scare me to this day. And, just watching it again after, like, let's say 10 years, sort of a chill goes down my spine just watching some of these scenes, because it's a very strong nostalgic pull to this movie, which I guess is a good thing, because otherwise I probably wouldn't care for it that much. But because I saw bits and pieces of this when I was much, much younger, this movie is going to stick out with me more than it might many people. But what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, much like Tremors, this is kind of a first-time watch for me. Like, I can't say officially it is, but I'm going to consider it a first-time watch. And, I thought it was okay. Just a little inconsistent with its entertaining moments throughout the movie. I thought there were moments that were good. There were moments that were just, I don't know, just uninteresting. But William Katt is decent in the movie, and I kind of remember him from Carrie. That's the main thing I remember him from. I don't necessarily have a problem with his acting or anything. It's just, I guess his character, I didn't really care too much about him. Maybe it's because he's a writer, I don't know. I have this thing about writers that I don't really like, but, well, not dislike, but I'm someone who doesn't read books, so there you go. But like I said, it's got its moments. So throughout the movie, by the end of it, I feel like I had an okay time. Oh, I should also mention, I think it's got some decent ladies in the movie too. It's got Kay Lenz, who I remember from Strip to Kill, and I think she was also in Headhunter. And then I can't remember the name of the other actress, or the one who was using him for babysitting or something. She was fine too. I just thought that was worth mentioning.
Yeah, I do agree that some of this might have needed some tidying up. I like a lot of the ideas in this movie. I don't know if they're supposed to be alternate dimensions, but the guy goes through his bathroom mirror into like this dark void. Meets like his gun-slinging, flying ghoul type thing, which is a bit ridiculous, but I do like the idea of him able to, find his son who's like lost somewhere in the deep recesses of the house, and it also have links back to his Vietnam days. I think they could have maybe did a bit more with that, but I do think it's a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
And actually the makeup, the design for the zombie army guy, I think it looks not amazing, but I think it looks decent.
Yeah, I kind of enjoy the scenes where the zombie army guy is in the movie, but at the same time, I felt like it was just, I didn't really care for the, I don't know what you want to call them, flashbacks or whatever, where they're showing those scenes where he's out there running around with this dude. I don't know, for some reason that just didn't, I didn't care for that.
Well, you and everyone else apparently, since nobody's going to buy this book if you haven't actually finished writing it.
Yeah. The house that's in the actual movie, I wonder if that's been used in a lot of other movies. It just feels like I've seen this house before. I can't really think of where, but it just feels like a house that a lot of people would use for movies.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, if the house is as it mostly shows in the movie, I can imagine it being a popular place to film, because it looks pretty nice.
Yeah. To be honest, I've already kind of forgotten what it looks like, but I remember as I was watching the movie, hey, I wouldn't be surprised if this has been in a whole bunch of other movies.
Yeah, I do like to give a sort of a shout out to one individual scene. This scene is probably one of the scenes that always sort of, I guess, spooked me the most this past when I was younger. But so the main character is babysitting this kid. On a side note, the mother who drops off the kid after knowing the guy for like 3 minutes has to be one of the worst mothers in existence. that sort of cracks me up. But so he's babysitting this kid, and then he gets to riding a bit. Then he looks up, the kid's gone. and then like he looks around a bit, and then he sees with his like overweight demon ghoul type thing. I'm not sure what exactly they would be, but he sees the kid being dragged away by one, the overweight woman type thing, and it's a very quick scene. It sort of like pours the kid through the door. That scene, I'm not sure what it is about it, but that scene always stuck with me. Pretty much everything past that sequence, I think, is probably the most interesting part of the movie. I liked it beforehand, but that sequence, I don't know, is the best part. So I know it's a movie that if I hadn't seen it when I was younger, I probably wouldn't find it that remarkable. But like I said, because of the nostalgic volume, I can't help but give it a bit more credence.
Yeah, I can kind of understand like when you said you get some chills in certain scenes, because I have a certain like a similar thing with the 1990 version of It, and I know a lot of people out there, especially people who didn't watch it back when they were young, they watch it now and they go, this is really corny and silly, but it's just something about when you watched it at that young age and it just sticks to you. And so when I watch that 1990 version of It, at least the scenes with Pennywise in it, usually that gives me goosebumps.
It's also sort of a nice feeling. Sometimes I feel like you can't trust how much you like the movie because of that, but I mean, I guess you just have to deal with it as it comes around.
Well, that's why you can't rate movies based on what you think other people think of the movie. You just gotta rate how you feel about it, and that's what I do with that movie. So, and as we all know, I give that movie a 10 out of 10, so yeah, it is what it is.
Well, if it makes anybody feel better, I'm not giving this one a 10 out of 10. I am, however, going to give this one pretty high rating, being an 8 out of 10. And like I said, some scenes are a bit too goofy for me, because the humor is, it's just a bit much at times. But I like a lot of the ideas in this one, and I wish it could have been a little more cohesive, if they threw in a little more, I guess, background into some of the characters. But overall, and partially because it's nostalgic, partially because I think it's some nice concepts, I find it a pretty enjoyable movie. So an 8 out of 10 is going to be my final rating.
I'm going to go with a 6. I'm not sure if I'd watch it again, but I had an okay time with this one. It had some decent moments, but like I said, they're a little inconsistent. I found myself at times falling in and out of interest with the movie, and yeah, there's certain parts that I didn't really care for in the movie, and the fact that he's a writer is, I've got a friend who's a writer, and sometimes I just want to tell him to shut up about his books. But anyways, yeah, 6 out of 10, it's okay. So next up we've got Peeping Tom from 1960. It's about an aspiring filmmaker who goes around filming women capturing their terror on tape as they get murdered. Now, I guess it should go without saying that pretty much any movie before the 70s, I usually have a pretty tough time with enjoying, usually for a multitude of reasons. A big part of it is that they all kind of had the same... I don't know if I could say they all have the same feel, but a lot of them... I don't know, it's just this way that movies from the 60s and before were presented. It's a tough thing to explain for me, but... And also, I feel like a lot of movies from before the 70s, it's tough to find, like, violent movies. Not that I'm someone who has to have violence in his movies, but it just feels like if there's no chance of having that, it severely limits what they can do to entertain me. I heard people talk about this movie kind of being, like... I think I read somewhere that someone considered it to be like the first slasher movie, and I don't think I would go that far as to calling it a slasher movie. It certainly has some aspects that you can attribute to inspiring maybe a slasher movie, but I don't think I would go as far to call it one.
Yeah, so this is a movie that I've been wanting to see for literally like 10, maybe 15 years. and I've thought about this so often, and it often makes like if people make lists of proto slashers, this would often be on the list. I have to admit I didn't enjoy it anywhere near as much as I hoped I would. On a quick side note, I actually had no idea this movie was in color until I actually started watching it. I just assumed it was in black and white, like pretty much all my life, and seeing it's actually in color was sort of surprising. Unfortunately, because there's like almost nothing worth, it might as well have been in black and white because there's nothing really worth seeing. I guess they throw in some nudity, but it's pretty tame. I guess the thing about this movie is when it came out, and you might have heard this, it got like it got decimated by critics. Like it was called one of like the most heinous movies of its time, and like it was heavily edited. I think it's like 80-minute versions, and the movie is about an hour and 40 minutes. So they cut out like 17 minutes of it. And watching the full version from a modern day perspective, I just don't get it. I wasn't expecting H.G. Lewis level of violence, but I was expecting something. And
Yeah.
This movie has like one on-screen kill, and it's not. I mean, there's a little blood, but it's in my opinion not overly impressive. I do like the whole psychoanalytical look into the main character. It's interesting, but also, I mean, this has to be one of the most socially awkward guys I've ever seen in my life. It's just hard to watch him try to have a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, he's high strung, but he's just not creepy enough for me. That I think that's one of the main things. You know, he's constantly he feels nervous and maybe a little secretive, but I mean, obviously he's not the most level-headed guy out there, but he just doesn't feel like he has that creepiness factor that you find in some other movies of similar nature. So
yeah, there's a scene in which he's talking to the mother of, I guess, his main love interest. So he's talking to the blind mother, and just a really it's like a 8-minute awkward conversation where the mother's just trying to, I guess, not really get to know him, but just, I guess, feel him out. It's just strange. I sort of expecting the mother to give some like information, like, oh hey, I knew your father type thing, but it was just a conversation that didn't really go anywhere, didn't do anything, and the movie had some interesting ideas. I liked the I guess origin portion where he's just talking about what his father was doing to him. I mean, it was interesting, and I personally think the main actor, he's a German guy, I think he did a pretty good job. It's just that it's not much. I feel like it's not much going on in this movie. I mean, it's pretty disappointing in my opinion.
Sometimes in like movies from the 60s and before, and it happened once or twice in this movie where it feels like they're having sex with the tone of their voice. Like like the woman will her voice will start to get higher as she gets more excited, then the guy has to start matching that, and then she gets higher and he gets higher. Eventually they get to the point where they're both about to have an orgasm, but with their words. I don't know. Like I said, it's tough for me to explain these things, but I don't know. It's just something about the way movies from the 60s and 50s and all that. It doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, and I just want to, I guess, go on record saying that I've seen quite a lot of horror movies from the pre-60s. I think obviously Chucky can confirm, but I've watched so many 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s horror movies, so I don't generally have a problem with them. I mean, sometimes you'll find slow ones, like I find this one. It is worth mentioning that this movie did feel a bit to me like it's a movie from, I think it's 1962, called The Couch. It has a sort of a similar theme following this sort of crazy guy as he's going about his life trying to restrain himself from hurting those he loves. And this is another movie from 1964 called The Strangler, which is much the same way. And both of those movies, I feel like, dealt with this issue in a lot more interesting manner. Not that Peeping Tom doesn't have some things going for it, but I personally can't imagine me wanting to see this again anytime soon, which, you know, for being a classic movie it's just disappointing.
One thing that I will say, I mean, I felt like the movie started off okay, and then just as it went by, it just got a little less interesting, and it just didn't go the places that I thought it might go or could have gone, and it eventually just, you know, dwindled down as it went along. But for that opening scene where she was a prostitute, she said it was £2, which, you know, it's kind of amusing when you look back at some of these older movies, because now you watch it in this modern day and age, and you know, you think about what you can get for £2 now. That's like what a really cheap DVD in the DVD bin at Walmart or something. It's you know, £2 for a bang. You know, that's a good deal.
Inflation really hits hard.
But at least murder that ass before you murder her.
I don't know if he was so much interested in that type of thing.
Well, see, that's the problem. He should have been, and maybe that would have bumped up the rating for this one.
I mean, one thing that interested me about this one, probably more than anything else, was one, I forget what they called it, but it's like this, I don't know, like little shop, but they were sounding like nude pictures to people, like on the down low. That was probably one of my favorite scenes, actually, with the old guy sort of flipping through the pictures. Oh, I'll take this one and this. No, I'll actually take the whole thing. Like, gotta talk about a difference from nowadays. We can pretty much find anything you want online. To back then, actually having to go in shady places buying shady pictures. Yeah, I grew up in a whole nother generation, which I am quite happy for. And also the whole thing, like having movies like that with film reels, like just the whole technological differences, that looks so annoying to deal with. So yeah, if anything is interesting about this movie, it's just how far we've come.
Yep, so Peeping Tom. Like I said before, I just have a problem with movies that are pretty much pre-70s, so I didn't go in expecting to love this, but I thought maybe there was something in it that... something that would grab my attention, but unfortunately it just never got there. People sometimes mention this as one of the original slasher movies, and I just... It just... because it doesn't really have much or any violence in the movie, it's just... I can't approve of that label for it. So even though it started off a little okay and dwindled down, I'd say it started off as a 6 for me, but then it dwindled down to a 4. So I'm giving it a 4 out of 10. It's not a movie I'll watch again.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I did have a great time with this one. And like I said, this is one I've wanted to see for quite a long time. You know, it is one of those classics of the genre that I just hadn't seen yet. And I just found it more than anything just disappointing. I liked some of the ideas, but as an overall movie, I didn't love it. So I'm going to give this a below average rating of a 6 out of 10.
Well, at least you can get £2 for a prostitute. That's the one thing I took out of the movie that will remain in my mind for at least the short term.
At least you get something. Well, this final movie is maybe one of the more interesting movies of the night. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, from 1985, the year right after the first movie came out. In which a teenage kid named Jesse moves into the house that Nancy used to live in, and throughout the film he sort of becomes, in a way, possessed by Freddy, and he tries to, I guess, control his urges while Freddy is attempting to get out and continue his murderous rampage in the real world. And I first want to say, before anything else, that poster is so cool. I love the poster. It's like an A+ poster. The rest of the movie isn't that great though. It's still decent. It's just very different from the first movie. They go a very different direction with this one. And this is really like the black sheep of the Nightmare on Elm Street series of it all. And it can't go without mentioning this potentially gay undertones to this movie, and by undertones I might mean overtones. That makes it somewhat amusing and somewhat awkward at times, and I mean you can't watch the movie nowadays without seeing it. But I have a little bit to say about this movie. But what do you think about this one?
It's decent in the grand scheme of things, mainly because it's got Freddy Krueger in it. I mean, like a lot of the other horror movies where you've got these really popular characters, as long as that character is in the movie, it's watchable. Which is, despite some of the later sequels like Part 5 and Part 6, which I think are, to my memory, I think are the weakest ones in the series, but it's been a while since I've seen them. The fact that Freddy's in it still makes them somewhat watchable. And even though I think Part 2 it's nowhere near the best in the series, it's at least better than those other movies that I mentioned. So this one's decent, just for that main reason. It does have, like I said, some odd homoerotic type scenes in the movie. If it had one more, I might have orgasmed. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I didn't really think much of it back when I used to watch it as a kid, but yeah, it's just a little strange. I guess to counteract the homoerotic stuff, I thought Lisa was a fairly attractive girl in the movie. I don't know, maybe it was that scene where he was getting up near around those titties. So that's probably what did it for me.
Yeah, one thing I think might have helped a little is if, in the first movie, if we had ever once seen Nancy keeping a diary, that would have been nice. Because there's a whole thing in this where the kids find, her diary, and then they learn about Friday, and of course they try to learn more about him. We didn't see anything in the first movie that showed that she didn't keep one, but it's just things like that might have made this a bit easier to swallow.
Did you just say swallow because of the whole homoerotic thing?
It's actually not quite what I was going for, but I'm happy that you pointed that out.
Okay.
Actually, on a side note, the guy who plays the coach, I can't remember the guy's name, but that guy, every time I see him in this movie, it just cracks me up because he's just such an aggressive guy.
Is he the guy in Total Recall with the baby thing on his chest? I can't remember what it's called.
I've not seen Total Recall.
Well, we're gonna have to change that.
But I do enjoy his scenes, especially so. There's a sequence in this movie when Jesse is, I guess, sleepwalking, and he winds up in a gay bar downtown, and he happens to run into the coach. And I have no idea if the coach has the authority to do this, but he brings the kid back to the school gym and has him run laps. Which that scene also cracked me up because I don't think that's what would happen. I might be wrong, but if you happen to run into one of those tunes at the gay bar, you're not going to take him back to the school and have him run laps. Well, and he's so dressed up in this complete leather clothes. That scene always felt so strange to me. But then again, I did go to high school back in the 80s, so maybe it's a different time.
Yeah, that is pretty funny. Like, some of the things that they used to do back in the day, yeah, it's just kind of funny to see, or to imagine them doing that now. Just imagine a teacher, out and about in the town somewhere, and they're like, that's it, detention right now. I can't remember if we discussed Carrie in the first or second episode, but it was a long time ago, but we had this thing where I know we had a small discussion about something like this where there's a scene in that movie where a teacher slaps a student. And I guess definitely, if they did that now, there'd be huge repercussions for that. But back then, it seemed almost normal for if someone gets out of line, they get whacked.
I guess one other thing I want to point out about this movie, it does have, despite the scene being, in my opinion, somewhat nonsensical, the poolside massacre with Friday, going after the kids. I always did like that line, "You are all my children now." Like I said, I don't think it makes much sense. I'm not sure if any of those kids' parents had anything to do with his death, but it was interesting, and I did like seeing him go after a bunch of kids too. So that's good stuff.
Yeah, I like. I can't remember the exact line that he said, but the guy is trying to kind of play the peacekeeper type role. I can't remember the line, but at least it was good to see him, dispose of that guy.
I felt bad for the guy, to be honest. He was just trying to be a nice guy, and I like how he thought Friday was somehow, capable of being, sedated. Like, hey, calm down, buddy. And you can just tell he just wants to kill that guy, and it's some good stuff. Also, I have to point out, I really like Jesse's father in this movie. Like, that guy and his aggressive nature. Just, the house is overheated, that board blows up and he blames the kid. That's another one of those scenes that consistently cracks me up.
Maybe he's got something pent up from the fact that his son's doing a bit of homoerotic type stuff.
Well, I mean, you can't forget Jesse's dance.
Yeah.
It's
not quite as memorable as, say, like Crispin Glover from Friday the 13th Part 4, but yeah, it's
he does have some pretty dope sunglasses though. I mean, that's like a scene I would see in a teen comedy. Just a kid dancing and then his parents and their love interest walk in.
Yeah.
Although I will say this movie has really nice partial effects. Especially the scene that always stands out to me is when Friday sort of coming through Jesse's body, and I think it's Grady's room. I thought that scene looked really cool, and again, that whole scene itself is a bit strange, but I think this partial effects are at least decent, even if the story is not the most sensible. The way this movie ends is somehow even worse than the first movie's ending, so that's impressive. Honestly, they don't know how to end these movies. I guess the best ending is probably the fourth movie. I mean, the third movie is a decent ending, I guess, but they just have the problem with knowing where they're going with this. But it's probably one of the most interesting movies of the original six. As much as, I mean, I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's probably more average than anything. But it's, in my opinion, it's definitely better than number 5. So if you can at least get through 5, you'll probably enjoy this one.
Yeah, there's a lot of the Freddy movies that I've only seen a few times, and then there's a few that I've seen many times. It's certain this one part 2. It's certainly not, a standout in the series, at least for me.
It is in some ways.
Well, it's got like a 5.5 out of 10 on IMDb, so that's one of the worst ratings from the movies in the series, I believe.
Yeah, honestly, the fourth movie has a 5.7. The fourth movie is probably better than this one, but I think it's a bit of a close call, but that's just my controversial opinions. This movie's not great. It's very much a different movie than the first one. It's not nearly as classic, but there are some scenes in this movie that I think are quite memorable. It's interesting. It's just a lot different. So I'm giving this one a 7.5, and I'm going to lower that down to a 7, which is my average rating. Like Chucky said, it has Freddy in it, and you can only screw up Freddy so much. And I think it's actually pretty menacing in this movie. It's just the rest of the movie I could do without. But it's very interesting watching it from a modern day perspective. So a 7 out of 10 seems pretty fair.
Yeah, I'm going with a 7 out of 10. Like I said, it's got Freddy in it, so how bad can it really be?
Or watch 5 and find out.
Well, that's where it gets to its lower points, yes. But technically, if you're a fan of Freddy in any kind of way, you'll find anything he's in to be at least watchable. And this one's a little bit better than some of the other worst movies in the series. It's still far from the best, but I enjoy it enough.